Hello there everyone, it's your old pal Cape Joel, back again with another installment of the story so far. If you've never seen this show before, basically the deal is we take a look at a comic book storyline that has already wrapped up, and unlike the other videos on my channel where, I give nice little vertical slices of what's going on here, this video is a little longer, a little bit more in-depth, a chance for us to, examine themes and characterization and growth and, stuff that we might not be able to do as well in a 3 to 5 minute video. And for this episode, we are going to be taking a look at The Punisher, Volume 2, The War in Bagalia, from writer Matthew Rosenberg, a personal favorite of mine. This arc just finished up this week, so I thought it would be fun to go back and explore it, especially because I had been looking at the book individually week to week, but just kind of got stopped up because, I had a lot of other comics to cover. But this one is cool. This one has been highly recommended for me, so yeah, let's get into it, why don't we? Now, before we start, perhaps an important little bit of backstory. When the previous arc ended, Frank Castle, the Punisher, had seemingly been betrayed by Nick Fury Jr. and the superhero community. They had essentially traded his life to Baron Zemo, current leader of Hydra, although let's face it, there's like several leaders of Hydra depending on which book you're reading at any given moment. The hope being that maybe if they had traded the Punisher to these guys, they wouldn't attack America anymore at best, or at worst, Nick Fury Jr. was hoping that the Punisher and Baron Zemo would just kill each other because they've been at each other's throats pretty much non-stop since the end of Secret Empire, when Frank, seemingly out of character, joined Hydra only to quickly change his mind, get buyer's remorse, and now, dedicate himself fully completely to not only taking down Baron Zemo, but taking down his plot to build essentially a brand new recognized nation of Bagalia, which is the fictional nation that he used to run. And that basically sets the stage for the story. As Volume 2 begins, we actually get a rather interesting little take on the day-to-day life of Baron Zemo trying to run his own rogue nation, or a nation of rogues, as I called it previously, and it's not going well. It's going really bad. Apparently everything that Frank Castle had been doing to really try and hurt the nation and try and, hurt people's support for joining the UN and everything, it's been working. They can't even get eggs in the country anymore. Zemo can't even have a nice breakfast for dignitaries. That's one of the fun things that Matthew Rosenberg really does with Zemo's characterization here, and that is he finds this sense of dark humor in the character that I don't think we've ever really seen before. I was instantly reminded of Mojo Jojo from the original Powerpuff Girls series, where it's like he's just so dedicated to evil, he just wants so much to be bad and to do bad things and take over the world, but little tiny normal everyday people stuff keeps getting in the way of his evil plans. And he's still scary and he's still intimidating, and he's still a worthwhile villain, but it's just you're laughing under your breath at him, and I thought that was really fun. When we do actually get to see Frank again, he's clearly been Zemo's prisoner for a long time. He's been torturing him, but he hasn't killed him yet because he has bigger, more villainous plans for him. This scene itself is actually a little hard to watch because we actually get some rather envelope pushing torture. Obviously, the Punisher book is different than a lot of the other Marvel books on the shelf right now because it's actually sold with a content advisory sticker. Few are, and they definitely earn that sticker this issue as we see Zemo carve a Punisher skull into Frank's body, and actually he'll spend the bulk of this arc out of costume, so I thought that was kind of interesting that they give that to him. It's also very similar to the Hydra tattoo that Zemo himself has, and indeed the Hydra tattoo that evil Steve Rogers, the Supreme Commander, had. So, I thought it was kind of fun that they bring that back. There's also another reason, too, why Punisher doesn't have his costume, and that is because Zemo has given his costume to Jigsaw, Billy Russo, one of the Punisher's oldest and most hated adversaries. Probably his arch nemesis, arguably, because he's one of the few villains of his that actually keep coming back and don't just get killed. The idea being is that while Frank is prisoner, Zemo wants Russo to run around as a fake Punisher Punisher, commit a bunch of crimes in Bagalia, and really try and, you know, turn the world's opinion of the Punisher against him. And, you know, Jigsaw plays just this hilarious, ridiculous version of the Punisher, just like turned up to 100. He literally just, you know, shouts into news cameras, "Oh boy, here I am the Punisher, here I go killing again, aren't I a jerk?" And that's kind of like a C-plot that goes all throughout this arc. You know, what's the fake Punisher up to now, and what does this mean for Bagalia? And, you know, will you know, the world at large turn against the Punisher? I mean, probably no more than they were already against the Punisher. I feel, you know, that subject is a little black or a little white. Either you're 100% for the Punisher or you're not, but yeah, that's that. Now, when Zemo eventually tires of torturing the Punisher in his house, he decides to send him off to a Hydra gulag in Bagalia to rot, a place, you know, filled wall to wall with political prisoners and anti-Zemo, anti-Hydra people, because obviously Bagalia as a nation, you know, is a place, you know, founded for terrorists and supervillains and what have you. So obviously the people they would deem to be prisoners are ultimately not that bad. It's in the prison that Frank, you know, just refuses to go along with the program, as you would assume he would. You know, he starts killing Hydra guards every day, Hydra guards who already hate him because he probably killed someone close to them to begin with. And eventually, you know, he keeps getting thrown back and forth to solitary confinement. He spends most of his time there, so much to the point that he grows a wicked head of hair and a righteous beard that we've never seen before. But all these fights with the guards eventually catch the attention of a nun, a woman by the name of Sister Mercedes, but who also goes by the name Sister Mercy, because that's way more comic booky. Turns out Sister Mercy actually knows the Punisher. They have a pre-existing relationship. She was a nun helping out with relief efforts in Venezuela when she first joined the convent back in the 80s. Why they even go as far as to reference the actual Punisher story that she came from. The Punisher toppled the government that, you know, was abusing people at that time, and she thought everything was going to be great because the bad people were gone. It only got 100% worse, because the next regime was even more terrible and abused people even worse, so much to the point that she even got one of her eyes messed up. So she's a blind nun here as a prisoner in Bagalia, but she's also kind of the de facto leader of all the prisoners here and the Zemo dissidents, and they desperately want Frank to join their cause. Which, as you might have guessed, trying to get the Punisher to join any sort of team is always going to be an uphill battle. He's a lone wolf, he doesn't play nice with others, and he especially is distrustful of this nun lady because he can already tell that Sister Mercy is trying to save his soul, as it were. You know, she tries to teach him the lessons that violence begets violence, and in fact, she was the victim of violence that he himself begat. And it's interesting that Rosenberg shines a light on this, because I feel a lot of stories, you know, kind of shy away from talking about Frank's own relationship with faith and his own relationship to God and everything, because if you read those Ennis books, which, pardon the pun here, you know, were always gospel to me when it came to writing the Punisher character, we found out that, you know, Francis Castiglione grew up, you know, in the Roman Catholic Church. He was an altar boy and everything, but, you know, he definitely strayed from the path, you know, more than anyone could ever imagine. And I think one of his most famous lines from Punisher Max is, you know, but they used it in the Warzone movie too, the "some days I just want to get my hands on God." And eventually, though, you know, he will end up helping Sister Mercy when a bunch of the Hydra goons, you know, try and beat her up. He takes the beating for her, and he gets messed up so badly they have to do surgery on his brain because, you know, it's swelled up so bad. Punisher actually goes through, like, several appearance changes throughout this arc, which I thought was very interesting. You don't normally see that. We had Jesus Frank with the beard, then we have shaved head Stitches Frank later on, and, you know, begrudgingly, he decides that he will join the nuns' crusade, for lack of a better word, to try and escape, if only so he can finally have his rematch with Zemo. And it's from here we reach basically the middle part of this War in Bagalia arc, and I think that this issue is really the premier issue. It's the standout one. It's the big breakout storyline, but it's not done in the way you would assume a superhero breakout story would be done, mainly because the whole point of it is that the Punisher cannot get involved. He has to be in solitary confinement, and so the nun wants him to help build an army to, you know, turn the inmates into a fighting force so they can escape. But that's going to be hard because, again, this is a political prison full of, like, you know, cartoonists who got in trouble because they made fun of Zemo, and, you know, people who worked with labor rights groups and everything. They're not fighters. They have no idea what they're doing, and the Punisher has to work with them. And it's great because we see the entire, you know, breakout plot, which is very clever and very layered. They get a whole issue devoted to how exactly they break out of the prison, and the Punisher only shows up in the last 2 pages. It's everyone else having to, you know, get the items they need to poison guards and, you know, mess with pipes and water mains and, you know, steal Hydra outfits and everything so they can blend in. It's all very meticulously put together, and you can tell Rosenberg spent a long time working on this portion of the comic, because if this part didn't work, this whole story wouldn't work. It's also at this point, too, I remember that Taskmaster is actually involved in this story, too. Baron Zemo sends Taskmaster to basically keep an eye on Frank and make sure he doesn't escape. He's a very, very minor player in this story. He's not even the secondary villain, because, you know, Jigsaw is the secondary villain. He's like the 3rd tier villain, and he's ultimately defeated quite easily in this story too. I can understand why writers keep coming back to Taskmaster for Punisher, because they both have the skull motif, but I swear his win-loss ratio against the Punisher is just ridiculous at this point. But still, keeps coming back. Taskmaster, he's a busy boy, he's a busy villain. He's in so many books right now. He's in Spider-Man, he's in this, he's in Captain America. Business is booming for the super mercenary, I tell you. Just can't get away from this guy. It's during the prison breakout, too, we get to see a side of Frank Castle, the Punisher, that never really gets shown all that much when it's not a flashback, and that is Frank as a leader of men, you know, him leading men into battle and him trying to, you know, protect the inmates that he has now, you know, inspired to do all this fighting. There's a great scene wherein one guy can't bring himself to kill any of his Hydra jailers, and Frank's like, okay, you know what, if that's you, I can't force you to do it if you don't want to, but just know full well that because you didn't kill these jailers, more of your friends and your comrades are going to die. But I can't ask you to do it. And I just thought, you know, that is an interesting piece of characterization for the Punisher, because he was a leader during the war and everything, but he's such, you know, a works-alone guy now, and I wonder if one of the big reasons he works alone and why he doesn't want to share his whole punishment mission is maybe because, you know, he doesn't want to have to make those hard calls and have to ask people to kill on his behalf, that he wouldn't have it that way. It's a very short scene. It's maybe only like a couple panels long, but it was just one of those moments where I'm like, yeah, I see where you're going here. Yeah, few writers go here with that. I appreciated that panel, short though it was. Now, eventually, once the Punisher and everyone else gets beyond the walls, we get a very cool little scene wherein Sister Mercy, you know, offers Frank a gift, and, you know, it's a shirt. It's a Hydra shirt, but she's completely customized it to where now, instead of an octopus, it's a skull, as it should be. And I thought this was a fun little callback to the octopus skull he wore when he was working for Hydra in Secret Empire. Now the whole situation has been completely inversed, and I'm like, oh, isn't that fun and clever that they did that? And also, as soon as the Punisher leaves the prison, he has to leave it in style. He's stolen a full Hydra tank, but he's, you know, spray painted a skull on it and everything, and he vows that he's going to be coming for Zemo very soon. And Zemo sees this on TV alongside Jigsaw, who he had actually done a mock trial for Jigsaw as Punisher and had executed him on Bagalian television, the idea being, you know, if the world thinks the Punisher is dead, no one's gonna come looking for him while I torture him. And Jigsaw is great in this moment with Zemo, because again, they form this super unlikely comedy duo where Jigsaw just keeps poking holes full of Zemo's plan, and he's like, okay, so, you know, you want to keep the Punisher alive, but, you know, what are you going to do when torturing him gets bored? Are you going to, like, turn him into a Hydra sleeper agent? And he's like, ooh, that's a good idea. Which, again, if you read Secret Empire, that's basically what happened anyway, and it didn't work out. Jigsaw further, you know, says, so, you know, you're a villain, and your whole country is filled with villains and criminals, and you brought the Punisher here to where you live, and you didn't think he was gonna get out, and you didn't think he was gonna kill everyone. And, you know, Zemo is just absolutely horrified by this, and, you know, Punisher breaks out on the same night. He's having a big dinner for dignitaries to try and get his country recognized, and he has this great thing where he's, like, trying to have this air of legitimacy about him and trying to pass himself off as this fancy world leader, only to completely crack under the pressure and start swearing and yelling at everyone. And it's just a great moment of unraveling unraveling, and again, just darkly humorous. People forget that those, you know, Garth Ennis Marvel Knights Punishers that everyone really liked were darkly funny, and I think, you know, a dark sense of humor is important to a good Punisher story, and Rosenberg definitely keeps that alive and well here in this story. Now, the big centerpiece finale of all of this is the Punisher just tear-assing right for Zemo's base of operations. Jigsaw is paid to intercede, and we get a really cool, like, Fast and the Furious style motorbike chase all over the city, and Jigsaw really gets to, you know, mouth off to the Punisher here, saying, you know, back in the day, I used to be your #1 villain, I used to be your arch nemesis, you know, what changed? You've been cheating on me with all of these Hydra guys, am I really gonna have to up my game now to maybe bring myself back to #1 in your eyes? And it's just really fun. Another gag, too, that I should probably talk about that I almost forgot, Rosenberg fills this story with references to other comic creators. There's a Hydra commander that Frank deals with all throughout this book, and his name is Duggan, which I'm sure is almost certainly a reference to Jerry Duggan, the comic creator, who, hey, just so happens to be writing the Punisher tie-in series for War of Realms that's out right now, so I figured that was a fun little Easter egg moment there. I like it when comic writers tag each other in their works. Now, eventually, when Zemo realizes that all is lost, that the Punisher is coming to kill him, and that all of his forces have fallen by the wayside, he pulls the ultimate coward move, and that is he essentially blows up his own country in hopes of blaming the Punisher, saying he did it, even though he faked his execution, and he tries to run. There's a great scene, you know, at an airstrip where he tries to get into a fighter jet, only to have the Punisher, like, drop down on him, like the frickin' gremlin, yeah, you know, in that old science fiction story, and he starts tearing at the wing and trying to get at him. Eventually, he gets Zemo to crash into the ocean, and Zemo hopes that he's done with the Punisher, that he's dead, even though he knows that this entire thing was one giant gong show, and his country has totally fallen. The Punisher took down an entire nation. He toppled an entire country in just a few days, and he did it from prison and without his costume and without his gear. The big stinger as the comic comes to a close and this arc comes to a close is that, okay, Zemo failed here, now he's going to try and regroup in New York, which is a terrible idea because that's the Punisher's stomping ground, don't you know? There's also, from the solicitations, we can see that Kingpin is going to feature quite prominently in the next Matthew Rosenberg Punisher arc, and I'm very excited for that because Matthew Rosenberg wrote the criminally underrated Kingpin miniseries from a few years back, and I'm hoping to see a couple things from that story show up here. But yes, that was the Punisher Volume 2 War in Bagalia, everybody, and I gotta say, I'm glad that I chose to do this on the story so far, because I think if I was reading this one week to week, I wouldn't be nearly as interested if I could read this all in one solid sitting, because there's a lot of little things that start to form over time that I think make this a richer, deeper, more interesting story. And I think if you are a Punisher fan, especially if you're a certain type of Punisher fan who likes it when they balance the grim street level noir stuff with the superhero stuff, you'll be really happy with what they do here, because Matthew Rosenberg finds a nice little happy balance compromise between those things. You know, Frank is still allowed to be scary, he's still allowed to kill dozens of mooks, he just so happens to be killing Hydra guys, and you get some supervillains in there too, and you get some references to other stuff that's going on in the Marvel Universe right now. I thought this one was quite appealing, and I'm definitely excited to see where this book goes next from here. So, until next time, everyone, this has been Cape Joel for the story so far. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, if there is a story arc you would like to see me cover in future, be it from Marvel, be it from DC, be it from wherever, do tell me in the comments section down below, and I will be sure to try and get to it, hopefully sooner than I have been. So I appreciate that, and I will be back again next time, everyone. Bye-bye.